Hendersonville, Tennessee, city just outside of Nashville, about 10 miles from the city line. And that's where I currently reside here in Nashville. And I woke up this morning and checked out the social media and saw an interesting post. Now, I'm living in a nice neighborhood and a nice house, and it's good to be here. But the economics of being a Nashville touring musician currently do not make any sense. If you are concerned with how much money you make and where you'll be able to live, I would not be able to afford this house in this neighborhood by myself with a touring income. The average, check out this post that I just saw this morning on Facebook, and it kind of put it all into perspective. Now, I already knew this, but here's the post. So what you're seeing is, harsh reality. And I will tell you this, when I, was on the road with Colt Ford and Gary Lewis, both of those gigs, I had a really small house. It was about 750 square feet. I had 2 bedrooms and 1 bath. It was in a bad neighborhood at the time. Now it's been gentrified, but it was a bad neighborhood. I would literally come home from gigs when I would play club gigs in town, and I would have a lot of cash, in my pocket that I had made from the gig. I would almost nearly have to fight to get inside my house and away from the neighbors who were, preying on me or just trying to descend on me. Another musician in that area was shot and killed, shortly after I got out of there. My mortgage at that time, and you figure the last year that I played with Colt Ford was like 2013 or 2012. And basically, my mortgage was about $687 a month, and that's because I got in early, bought into a bad neighborhood. My house was like $79,000, and it was not the greatest living situation at all, but it was enough for me. Now the economics. At that time, with me, having a mortgage of $689 roughly, and making $300 a show, as described in that little Facebook post, that is the average pay. And there are some that pay less, and there are some that pay more. But let me tell you a really funny story. We were on the road, and we played, this is either in Mississippi or Arkansas or somewhere like that, and it was some little small town. And the promoter had set up for us to have this nice lunch in a local restaurant that was kind of like the local, sit down, nice restaurant. So, hey, that's a nice gesture, because usually you're getting Subway sandwiches or something, that's not really that appealing. So we go to this place, and we have this young, kid that was waiting on us. And, we all pulled up to the restaurant in the Sprinter van that the promoter had, picked us up from the venue and said, here's where your lunch is. And so we go in, and the waiter goes, well, I thought you guys would all be, pulling up in your Lamborghinis and your, Ferraris. It just, we just busted out laughing because it's like, we all drove, except for one guy in the band who had like a Camaro or something. We all drove Hondas and Toyotas, and we're making $300 to play this sold out club tonight, and the next couple nights maybe we were opening up for a major act playing in a stadium or an arena, and we're still making that same $300. So the idea that we were all going to pull up in our Lamborghinis and Ferraris was just absolutely mind-blowing, because the reality is most people don't understand the economics of touring, and it's gotten worse. And I'll tell you why it's gotten worse. Number one, you can't get a house here for $79,000. You couldn't get a house like my first house. That would run you, at the minimum, that would run you $350,000 at minimum. And the economics of touring now, the artists are making less money because the expenses, the gas, the taxes, all the things, the fees, everything that they have to pay, the purchase of the merchandise that they sell, everything has gone up, which cuts into the bottom line. Now, I know from my personal experience that many times an artist will go out on the road and they will lose money for the year. At the end of the year, they might owe 10 grand, or they might owe 50,000, or they could owe hundreds of thousands of dollars, because you may be taking chances. I don't know that people are buying onto country tours, but man, if they're only paying $10,000 to the opening act, and they are opening in a arena, that might not be enough money to cover the payroll and the gas and the paying the driver. Drivers are not cheap. Buses are not cheap. Tour buses are extremely expensive. It'd be nothing to spend $1 million on a tour bus. And renting it, because most people would have to rent or lease. A lot of times artists, have a bus built for them, and then they lease that bus. And so all of these things are extreme expenses, and with no money coming in from record sales, Spotify and all that, yeah, they'll get a little bit of royalties, but it's nothing compared to, way the business was before. And so, now the economics, and this is not just for touring musicians, this is also for playing locally. I mean, you're not guaranteed to make $300 when you play that honky tonk for 4 hours straight. You're not guaranteed that. Yes, guys do make, that and more. And sometimes they might even make as much as $1,000. But in reality, you would make more money and save more money if you played down on Lower Broadway 4 to 5 nights a week than if you were to go on the road with, a major artist or a mid-level artist or a small artist, and it used to be kind of the, it always kind of felt like Nashville was sort of the AA, AAA, and everybody was out here in the clubs and playing, and you're playing and you're hoping to get called up to the majors, and you're waiting. Even me now at this age, I never know when a call's gonna come in and someone's gonna go, hey, we need this, and we think you're the person to do it. And I have turned down road opportunities. I got a call one time. I got a call on a Friday morning, and the call was to get on the bus that night, learn the material on the bus. They would give me the book. They would give me the tunes. So I'd be in my bunk all night, learning songs, and then play the weekend. And, the economics of it it'd be $300 a show. This was not an artist that was, on the way up. It's just an artist that's just, on that lower rung and now just playing a few shows, weekend warrior type stuff. And it just, I just said no. I could have done it. Yeah, sure, I could have got on the bus and I could have shedded the tunes and I could do it. But man, after all I've been through and my touring experiences, and I also know when you're not with a top artist, your travel accommodations, your rooms, your meals, everything takes a huge step down. And I've been on artists when they're on that downward trajectory, which they all will end up sometime. Everybody, except unless you're the Rolling Stones. You're gonna, there's gonna be a point where it's the state fairs, and then it's the local VFW, and then it's, and what ends up happening is you get crappy tour buses that break down. And sure enough, one of my friends took that call, that same call that I got. He took the call and he went out. And sure enough, that bus was broken down for 2 or 3 days in the middle of Texas. And they all got flights and flew home because they just couldn't wait for some part to materialize in the middle of Texas and get them home. So, the economics of being a musician right now, it doesn't even make sense to come to Nashville. And it really, for any job, I mean, you are going to have to work and grind and grind and grind and hope that you get lucky. Now, we used to, like I said, it used to be kind of like you're waiting for that call up to the majors and get your big touring gig and, get to travel and do all this. And man, I got to do a lot of that much later in life than a lot of people. I was beating it up in the clubs for years, and I was probably just too wild to take out on the road. And finally, maybe a gig came along where it was like, okay, it was my turn and I got to do it. But it was a lot easier for me to build equity in my home and pay the bills and buy some guitars. Because here's the other equation. I've talked about it before, but spending hundreds to make thousands. Okay, so when I first got with Colt Ford, Gary Lewis gig that I did before that was fly dates. So only thing I had to have was a pedal board and a couple guitars to take on the road. But with Colt Ford, when I got the gig, I was kind of like at a low point and I didn't have like a ton of gear. I had a decent amount of gear, but I didn't really have the gear that was needed for the job. So it was kind of like, taking out things like, I first started, I took out a Fender Super Reverb, and that amp had some issues at the time. And so that quickly went away. And then I had this Bogner, it was the one that Line 6 made. I forget what that was called, but I took that out for a few days. And then I made a few bucks. And then I started gradually, I had a 412 cab that I'd had from my Trick Pony days. Then I got an Egnator tweaker, little 15-watt head, and that thing sounded pretty good. And I ran that into the 412, and then I started, gradually buying amp heads because I still had that 412 I had been given by Hughes and Kettner, and it had, vintage 30s in it, Celestians. So that was a good sounding cab, and I just started buying heads, and I had a head box that I'd used on the road with Trick Pony, so I put an amp head in there. Then the tweaker became a backup head. Then that got damaged on a gig. Here's another thing. Your stuff can get damaged on the road. It dropped by local crews or lightning or rain or any number of things. And that's another expense. And the artist doesn't pay for that. You pay for that. So I had to gradually keep knowing that we had so many dates on the books, I knew I needed a bulletproof rig. I needed to be able to, if a tube went out or anything happened with one of my amp heads, I needed to be able to switch and go to the next one. So I had built a rig that had 3 amp heads, and a switcher to be able to switch from A to B. And then if both of those amps went down, then I could wire it up to go to C. But, it was just, from one to the other, and I would keep them both on. And if, something happened in the middle of a gig, now I had gone out before and, one of the heads doesn't work that day. And it's like, okay, you're going to be, and you're out for 3 weeks. So I'm spending, all this money to put together this rig, and I'm still just making my $300 a day. And we ended up, I think, playing about 135 shows, and there was a little bit of extra pay for some of the radio and TV things that we did. I think our tour manager said, hey man, if these guys are going to have to do all this stuff all day, they need to get paid a little bit. So we would make maybe, I don't know, 35 or 50 bucks or something if we would go do one of those. So at the end of the year, I made like $48,000. And with my $659 mortgage, it was doable, and I was able to, kind of enjoy and buy instruments and things that I needed for the gig. But man, if I had to do it all over again now, the average rent in Nashville is around $1,740 a month. And I don't know where this $1,700 place is, but it's a 1-room or 1-bedroom apartment. It's nothing nice. It's not in a great neighborhood. Man, things are just crazy, stupid, expensive. The economics of Nashville no longer make any sense. There was a time when I had a crappy apartment and it was $350 a month. And, with that, then playing your $200 Saturday gig, and you play a couple of those, and there's your rent covered, and then whatever you had else for that month, would cover your electricity and all that. But man, everything's gone up so much. I don't know how these young kids are going to make it. It's going to take young kids and musicians to keep this town going. And the economics do not make any sense. And that really goes for everybody that's coming in here. I mean, you can make serious money here, but musicians, I've thought about this in life. Musicians are kind of like, in the game of life where you have the kings and the queens and the generals and the pawns and the court jesters. The musician might even be below the court jester as far as the grand scheme of things. And, that is why you see a lot of musicians that are successful, hugely successful. They go out there and they repeat what the kings and the queens tell them to say, and they are beholden to them. They are not rebels. They are beholden to the system. And, the rest of us, we work for the ones that work for the kings and queens. So we are subjects. We are lower subjects, and we are treated that way. And, the people that run Nashville, they think they are above us, and they don't really acknowledge the fact that all of these musicians are what people are coming to see. They want to hear the live music. They want to go to these legendary bars or these big celebrity named bars that generally are owned by these huge restaurant groups. They're not even really owned by the artists for the most part. They're just licensed names. And once that artist drops down, look at Florida Georgia Line. They had the FGL house. And now that they are no longer a thing, they're no longer together, FGL House is now going to be Lainey Wilson. And, you know, with Lainey Wilson's star fades, they'll put somebody else there. It's just a big corporate machine, and it's overpriced for the tourists. It's overpriced for musicians. Played gigs recently downtown, and they were okay paying gigs, but you know, I had to pay $52 to park. That's just absolutely insane, but there is no other way to get my gear down there and me down there. You know, mass transit is not going to transport musicians to downtown to play their gigs. And the economics of Nashville just don't work anymore. You can crunch the numbers all you want. You can have, you know, 3 or 4 roommates in your $1,700 apartment that's 858 square feet. When I Googled this, the average rent at 1740, you know, it's 858 square feet. That's not enough to have several roommates. Now, if you're on the road and you just need a couch to crash on when you come back, but that's all you'll have. And you'll be working your butt off and getting old doing it. And the artists make lots of promises when you're out on the road. Oh, you know, in some cases, you might get to play on the record, and most of the time, you won't. Now, I was lucky with Colt Ford that he wanted to carry the banner of my guys play on the record. He says, hey, my guys play on the record. And at that time, he was one of the few that would let his guys play on the record. And, you know, it's not like we got to play, you know, really what we wanted to play or pick the songs or anything like that, but we would get to play on them. So that's why I was able to get these plaques on the wall back here. It's just pure luck and being in the right place at the right time. But other artists I've had, you know, promise, oh, you're going to get to play on this, or, you know, they always go, hey man, I'm going to, you know, if this happens, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And, you know, or I'm going to use some of your songs on my next record. And artists will promise you things or say that they're going to do things to keep you out there. If they value you, they might throw you some bones. And then again, they might promise you some bones, promise that you're going to, oh, I'm going to use this song you wrote on my next record and all that. And sometimes it happens, and a lot of times it doesn't. They keep you out there. They keep you in their system. And that system now, it's not enough to sustain your life, let alone if you have a family. You know, maybe you get lucky. Maybe you're one of those few that gets with an artist, and that artist, you know, bumps you up or treats you, you know, better than the others, and, you know, and takes care of his band and all that. But there are very few gigs like Taylor Swift. There's very few gigs with that reach that level of success where they start taking care of their crew members and their band and this and that. The economics of Nashville just don't work. You know, if you wanted to live downtown and be close and play Broadway all the time, man, you're looking at $2,800 to $3,200 potentially for rent. And, you know, man, I mean, how would you even, so then, you know, they used to say that you needed to make your rent in 1 week, to have good economic, you know, stability. So how in the heck are you going to make $2,800 or even $1,700 in a week? I don't know many jobs that pay that. I certainly have never played a gig that paid that much in a week. And certainly not at one time pop. I've had to one time fly to Mexico, and I did a week of recording one time, and I think we got $3,200. And that may be the most money I've made in a week, or maybe the time that we did a Colt Ford album and we played 4 or 5 shows that week, and then they paid us on Sunday morning to go in and track an album like all day, and maybe they paid us a lump sum of $2,000 or something like that to play on the record. And, so maybe I've had a $3,000 week here and there, but man, those are extremely rare. They don't happen. And something's got to change in order for people to be able to survive and keep doing this. I don't know how that's going to happen, but we're going to have to wait and see. And if you're thinking about moving to Nashville, you need to think really hard about that. And if you want to pay those dues, because not everybody's going to get rocketed to the front of the line like some other musicians that are here. There's a million great musicians, not literally, but it feels like there's a million talented and great musicians here. And you'll be one of them if you move here. You're going to have to put in the work, but mostly you're going to need a lot of luck, man, in order to survive, just to survive. So bear that in mind if you're thinking of moving to Nashville, whether it's for a corporate job or, being a musician. Man, it's going to be tough, and it could be rewarding. It could work out for you. This is not all doom and gloom, but man, you need to really seriously think about it. If you'd enjoyed this video, please hit like and subscribe, and check out my Amazon link or Sweetwater link for anything that you normally buy. If you purchase something from those links, it helps this channel out immensely. I'm Bad Brad. Thanks so much for watching.